This is Effects on Productivity, FedEx Ground Edition by me, John Eckerson. So if we take a look at FedEx Ground's 2015 annual report, we will see that in 2014, the total revenue was $1.039 billion, and that increased to $1.367 billion in 2015. So it had a big increase in revenue, which was a good thing for the company. But if we take a look at the operating income, you can see that in 2014 it was $162 million, which decreased to $151 million in 2015. So these numbers overall, they show a growth in the company, a big growth in the revenue, but they're not doing it as efficiently. So in this research, I'm going to determine kind of why they're not doing as efficiently. What is the reason for what is the reason for the decreasing productivity? So the things that I thought of to look at was the overall well-being of employees and how that affects productivity, the safety of employees and how that affects productivity, the positive and negative reinforcement used within the company, and also the technology used within the company as well. The theories kind of behind this is that if the overall well-being of employees is down, I mean they're unhappy, they have problems going on, they're not going to work as hard, which would decrease it that way. For safety, if employees are feeling unsafe at work, if they are, there's safety restrictions holding them back, then it could affect their productivity as well that way. For positive and negative reinforcement, if there's too much positive reinforcement used within the company, then there's no corrective behaviors. So they don't really learn to get better, just kind of promoting everything positively, what you can, and ignoring those negative factors, which then they don't really improve too well. I mean, they probably have a good morale, but they don't really improve and they don't work efficiently. If they have too much negative reinforcement within the company, it brings down the whole overall morale of the company, which would decrease it that way. And then the last one was technology and equipment used. If the technology is having any failures or slowing them down in any way, that obviously affect it. Or if they could possibly speed it up, make it faster for the employees, it would have a pretty big impact on that as well. So, finding out this information, I designed a survey for my research method. I surveyed 10 employees with 40 questions each, with 40 total questions or statements that the employees either agreed or disagreed on a Likert scale that was measured 1 through 5. This made it easy to test my hypotheses in the later results. So the hypothesis that I came up with, my predictions too, were that the well-being of employees would have an effect on productivity, the safety of employees would have an effect on productivity, positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement would have an effect on productivity, and also the technology used would have an effect on it as well. So after doing the surveys, I got my results, and this first graph here shows that it shows 10 participants agreeing and disagreeing with the statement, "My overall well-being affects my productivity at work." So as you can see in this graph, most of the participants agreed with this statement. So generally shows it's going to be true. I got a p-value of 0.009, which rejects the null hypothesis that states that well-being doesn't have an effect on productivity, and accepts the alternative saying that it does have an effect on productivity. So well-being does have an effect on productivity at FedEx Ground. The next one was about safety. These two graphs here, the first one has a statement, "Safety restrictions hold me back from working more productively." In this graph, looks like it leans more to the right as well, to the agreeing that it does, but I actually had a p-value of 0.1056. So then I cannot accept the alternative hypothesis, and I cannot claim it's true. So I have to accept the null hypothesis, stating that it's not true. But it could still be a possibility. 10 people is kind of light for doing surveys for. On the second graph here, it states, feeling unsafe at work affects my productivity. In this one, you can clearly see that a lot more people agreed, and it's more to the strongly agreed side than disagreed. For this, I got a p-value of less than 0.001, so that automatically rejects the null hypothesis and accepts the alternative that feeling unsafe at work affects their productivity. So, yeah. The next one, results on reinforcement. These two graphs show the same 10 participants from the last graphs and the results based on the statements above. In the first graph here, it says, I would work harder if I was rewarded more. And this one was like the same as the other ones. They were more leaning on the strongly agree side. For this one, I had a p-value of second. Yeah, I had a p-value of less than 0.001. So we can automatically accept that it's true. We reject the null hypothesis that states people wouldn't work harder if they were rewarded more, and we can claim that people would work harder if they had more rewards. So a possibility is they could reward people more. Over here, it's the same 10 people agreeing with this statement. When I get rewarded, recognized and rewarded for going above and beyond set expectations, it encourages me to work harder. So in this one, the graph was kind of more in the middle. I had a p-value of 1.446, so we cannot accept the alternative hypothesis that it is true. So in the overall kind of conclusion of this, I got the feeling that people like the idea of rewards and they would work harder to try to achieve those rewards, but once they get those rewards, they kind of stop going above and beyond, and they kind of just go back to their normal thing, or they just stay where they're at, not really going above anymore. So the next one was the results on the technology. These two graphs was the same 10 people as well as the last ones, and their opinions on the Likert scale about these statements. The first graph says, if technology used was faster, I could increase my own productivity. This was definitely more on the right side. I didn't get any people that disagreed with this one. So right away we can accept it. It did have a p-value of less than 0.001, so we can accept it's true that if technology used was faster, it can increase in productivity, which only makes sense. If it's faster, it makes productivity go up. The next one over here states, technology failure holds me back from doing my best. So, I was predicting in this one that a lot of people would agree with it, but we actually got a mean that was the same as the null hypothesis, so we cannot come up with a p-value. So we kind of have to accept that null is true, that the technology failure within the company, if there is any, doesn't hold them back. So I'm assuming there isn't much failure within the company, so it doesn't hold them back from doing the best. But if it was faster, then it would increase productivity. So the final conclusions of all the research I did, the overall well-being of employees does have an effect on productivity. The feeling unsafe has an effect as well. The rewards and recognition has an effect on productivity too. And then if we had faster technology, it would have an effect on productivity too as well. So my future recommendations for the company is that they should definitely look into the safety and well-being of employees, because that was kind of the what stood out the most, what rejected the nulls the most, had the lowest p-values. So they should definitely look into that the most. For looking into the well-being of employees, they could look into investing in life-work balance programs, which could help them reduce stress at work and outside of work, and just kind of bring their happiness up overall. They could also invest in better healthcare programs, so you can get them better care, so their well-being could increase that way. For safety, they could have OSHA come in and monitor their observations, or kind of just check around their building to see what's unsafe and what they could change from there. And then also I would have them actually look into their operations and just observe it from a safety aspect to see how we can make it better for the employees so they feel safer at work, which would increase productivity that way. And the last thing they could possibly do is invest more money in to speed up the technology, make the computers faster, make the equipment faster, just all that in general. So that's my recommendations. And then the last thing, before investing a bunch of money into these things, I would say do some in-depth interviews of the employees to see exactly what the problems are, see exactly why they're feeling unsafe, find out exactly why their well-being isn't as high as it should be, or what's going on there. Cool. So that was my Effects on Productivity, FedEx Ground Edition by John Eckerson. It's been fun.